What's up, everybody? Guess what? The U.S. men's national team has just dropped the roster, and they dropped the roster because I can't speak very well for the November window. Yes, it's all popping off. So hit like, hit subscribe, and let's get after it. Hi, hello, and welcome to your favorite Average to Good podcast. Call it what you want. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie Davies and not Tony Miola. Tony was so excited about this roster, he couldn't even come on the show and talk about it. But there are 25 names that are part of this November roster that just dropped, and we got to get into it. Chuck, you got to pause any of your feelings right now because I'm just going to run through these names because there are a few omissions and some additions that we need to get into. Let's start with the goalkeepers.
Before you get in,
what?
Can you just say the omissions already, like players who are not going, or are you just going to go straight into the roster?
Let's go into the roster, and then I'll rip through the omissions.
Go ahead.
Because I think the omissions will be pretty obvious once I start listing them out. But here we go. Goalkeepers. Roman Celentano from FC Cincinnati, Matt Freese from NYCFC, Jonathan Klinsmann from Cesena, and Patrick Schulte from the Columbus Crew. No Matt Turner. That's the omission there. Chuck. And then defenders, we got Max Arfston, Serginho Dest, Alex Freeman, Mark McKenzie, Tim Ream, Miles Robinson, Joe Scally. Welcome back to the fold. John Tolkien back in. Austin Trusty. Wow, some omissions there for sure. Midfielders, Tyler Adams back in. Sebastian Berhalter, Aiden Morris, Gio Reyna. That is going to be a talking point, I would say. Christian Roldan, Tanner Tessman, and Sean Sawatsky from the Columbus Crew. And then our attacking players, let's say our forwards, we should say. Brendan Aronson, Fuller and Balogun, Diego Luna, and Ricardo Pepi. I feel like I'm missing someone. Oh, Haji Wright, and Haji Wright. So those are our 25 names.
No Anthony Robinson.
No Jedi Robinson.
No Chris Richards.
No Chris Richards.
Pulisic, no Weston McKennie. No Tim Weah. No Malik Tillman. And no Alejandro Zendejas. Now, we know injuries are part of the equation, right? So Christian is just getting back to training.
Right.
Okay.
That
I
makes
understand.
sense.
You haven't played a game. Mm-hmm. Sure. McKinney's playing. And he's being trusted by Spalletti.
New coach, though, right? Didn't this happen last time for a window, the September window, that he wanted him to kind of win his place under Igor Tudor at Juve? Now Tudor's fired, Spalletti's in. I'm just saying that's a rhetoric that's been used around Weston McKennie before.
Sure. But this happens all around the world. Players leave for the national team, and it's a badge of honor. And every manager knows that's what happens. That's what you get. Your best players leave. That's typically what happens, unless there's an injury. But, okay, that's beside the point. Timothy Weah injury, quad, right?
Okay, no problem.
Malik Tillman injury, Zendejas injury. So Richards no injury,
but there's been beef between him and Oliver Glasner,
correct?
The manager of Crystal Palace.
Yeah, and then no Matt Turner.
So fun fact: Matt Turner, who hasn't played a competitive game since October 19th because the Revs didn't make the playoffs in MLS. He's been reportedly been training with Crystal Palace. So maybe that Oliver Glasner beef is extending to Matt Turner as well. It's a bad joke, Chuck. Okay, I need a sympathy laugh if you can give me one. Chuck's got the best sympathy laughs, everybody.
Hey, well done, Jim.
Thank you. Glasner, though, I guess did reference that Chris Richards is dealing with a calf issue, which I don't know. As we went over the last show, there hasn't really been an apparent calf issue that we've seen.
You can't reference a calf issue when you're playing 90 minutes. I'm sorry. So for Ivis to throw that in there, hey, it's a calf issue. Sure. Everybody's got issues. Every professional has something there's some sort of maintenance they have to do. How often have you had to play with banged up toes or a bruise, a contusion, ribs, whatever it is, you play through it. And if it doesn't prevent you from playing club football, then you certainly should be called into the national team camp, and that shouldn't prevent you from that. But of course, there's an issue with Oli Glasner and Pochettino last window in terms of how much Chris Richards was played. Fun fact, though, Chris Richards came back to Crystal Palace and still played. Didn't miss a game. Still played in every match. So I guess that's where I'm struggling to understand, because if Chris Richards had gotten injured on international duty or came right back and got injured, then you'd say, hey, that's uncalled for. You did this to him because you didn't manage his minutes, but that didn't happen.
Okay, so that's the list of omissions. We'll get into some more of that, I suppose, as the show goes along. There has to be a list, Chuck, of people going like, wait, really? Me? I'm getting you're calling me? Like, I look at Sean Zawadzki and that guy must have been like, is it for real? Like, didn't he tell us the last camp that they weren't trying out new people anymore? But okay, so Zawadzki has to fall into that one for me.
Agreed.
Joe Scally seemed like he was on the outs. He must have been like, holy crap, I'm in. Gio Reyna obviously is in that list as well.
I don't think Joe Scally is in that category.
You don't think so?
He's
Okay.
He's in a different bucket. I mean, this is a player who's, I think, come a long way with his maturity. He plays every week in the Bundesliga. Now, there was, I think, an incident off the field, not
in
necessarily
March,
that caused Pochettino to go, you know what? You're off to the side. You got to prove yourself again to get back into this camp. He is back into the camp. And I think when you look at it from that perspective, he warrants a look. He's playing.
Do you feel like this is his last chance, though? Last chance saloon for Joe Scally and Gio. We'll get into Gio, I guess, but is this Joe Scally like chance at redemption from what happened back in March? Because that clearly, whatever happened in March, not just for Scally, but for a whole host of players, it feel like the perception, or at least how Pochettino felt about them, changed significantly, and that's impacted his selections moving forward.
Well, you also have to remember, right, in this camp, I think he's going to be used as a right center back. So he's competing with Miles Robinson for that spot. He's not a wing back. Even though he's been playing wing back with Mönchengladbach, he's not a wing back. So Dest, Freeman, they are competing for time in that right wing back spot. Remember, Timothy Weah is probably going to be in that position too.
Yeah.
And then on the opposite side, you have Arfson and Tolkien for the left wing back spot. But to go back to your question, who are guys kind of looking at this as their last chance? I think Austin Trusty, finally getting back into the Celtic team, new manager, he's starting to play. Tolkien, probably last chance. Scally, I think probably not the last chance, but because Pochettino knows what he can give, and he's been solid in that right center back spot. Although for me, he's not really a center back either, but he can get away with it in this position because he does understand positionally where he needs to be in and out of possession. He has that ability to, get up the line if he had to, but more from a defensive standpoint with press if they're playing a little bit higher, and he can recover, plays, I think, the weak side relatively well. So I think that's where we're looking at. And then I think Brandon Aronson's in this conversation. Gio Reyna for sure is at the top of it. Top.
All right, let's talk about Gio Reyna. Interesting call up because there's been a pretty strong narrative from the coaching staff that you got to be playing regularly to get a call up. When I look at what Gio has done recently for Borussia Mönchengladbach, who are currently 16th out of 18 in the Bundesliga, they just got a win against St. Pauli this past weekend, 4-0. So that was a good one for them. So he played 12 minutes in that St. Pauli game. He played 6 minutes against Bayern Munich the game before that. Played 30 minutes in their 3-1 loss to Union Berlin. He played 10 minutes against Bayer Leverkusen. That's that last one, September 21st. So since September 21st, he's played 58 minutes, Chuck. 58 minutes since September 21st. For me, that doesn't warrant a call-up. Now his history and his World Cup experience and what we know he's capable of, okay, you bring him in. Okay, I can understand, but that doesn't fit the narrative that we've heard otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're comparing it to Yunus Musah, right? Who has played 128 minutes in Champions League, hasn't really been used. Again, we go back to why did his agent suggest Atalanta is the right spot to go?
We could do a whole show on that alone.
No sense. But for Gio, it goes back to what he does. There isn't another player who has his creative genius on the ball. Again, when he's fit and when he's confident, there isn't a player that possesses his ability on the ball, his ability to break down lines with his passing, just his instincts, phenomenal. On the ball dribbling, But again, it's been in spurts. It's never been consistent. I think Pochettino is looking at this as if there's one player that's worth taking a flyer on because he's finally back in training, he's playing, he's healthy, not playing in competitive matches in the amount that you would need to really be given a call up. But I think he's saying, I'm going to test him. Maybe it's a substitution role in the World Cup where we're playing against a team that's in a low block. Maybe we're playing against a team who got a lead and now they're defending. We're playing against a better team, but they get a red card. And now we need somebody to come in to unlock, to unbalance teams. Gio Reyna's your guy. Not someone who's going to drop deep and get on the ball that we saw in that Nations League a couple of years ago where he had to come back in between the center backs and in that defensive midfield role and try and make the game from there. No, I'm talking underneath the striker where we saw him thrive before the injury where he passes to Balogun and they score against Canada. That's when we're talking. All right, that's Gio Reyna at his prime. So I think that's what Pochettino's thinking.
No, I like your analysis there. And I'll also add, I liked your phrasing of let's take a flyer on him. That's where Gio is right now in his evolution with the national team. That's not really what I think we thought we would be saying coming out of the 2022 World Cup with regard to, we thought he'd be such a pivotal driver of our attack. And now he's not necessarily an afterthought, but we're taking a flyer on the guy. This for me is such a huge camp for him. Not only on the field, off the fields, whatever they're looking at the little details that matter when they're talking about culture, everybody working together, rowing the boat in the same direction. He has to show up in all facets of the game, Chuck, and not just in the game, but in practice. Like it has to show every single time he steps on the field. He has to show and do those little details.
What's so funny, Jimmy, is we just interviewed Sasho Swarovski at Maryland, right? And he talked about watching players when he scouts them about how they interact with their teammates when they're in their low moments. You know, how are you analyzing when you're scouting a player just to kind of get a better picture of, is this guy a right fit for a club? You have to know where they sit in the meal room, who they talk to, how they interact with staff, how do they treat the staff with respect, how they show up for meetings. Are they late? Are they on time? Are they 5 minutes early? Where are they sitting in the room? We're talking about going to practice. Are they early for treatment? Are they warming up before the warm-up, before the actual warm-up? Who are they passing with? What are those conversations like? Where's their energy levels? Are they excited to be there? Or is it moping around? You're breaking down every single thing. Everything. And that's where we are with Gio. If there's any negative, because again, Pochettino's trying to figure out, is this guy worth bringing into the camp if he's not a starter? Will he take away anything from the group's aura, the group's positivity, the environment? Will he be a negative in this situation? I need everybody in this damn camp to say, I will do whatever it takes. I will run through a wall for my team, for my country. I'm so happy to be here no matter what role I'm in. And I get it. You want some guys who have that little, pissed off element to them because they're not playing, but not enough to take away
to the team. Yeah, can't take away from the team. One thing I can't get past, Chuck, before Greg Berhalter made his comments and everything blew up about that situation, before anybody knew anything, there was a vote. They voted on whether they were going to send Gio Reyna home from the World Cup.
Yep.
That is batshit crazy to me. That there would be
heard of it. I've never heard
like that. Ever. I mean, that kind of tension that a player had created that much drama behind the scenes that you were voting on whether to send him home from the World Cup.
The only time I've ever heard of a vote in a World Cup, we're talking the upper echelon of players, was that France 2010 team. Remember?
Yes.
Dominic came in and it was just an absolute shit show. That's the only time I think I remember it being out there publicly that there was potentially a vote. Now, this wasn't public until after the World Cup, right? But to have it come down to a vote, and by the way, he stayed by a margin, right? By one vote or two votes. That tells you how split it was in terms of how they viewed Gio Reyna, not only as a player, but more importantly, as a teammate, as a person. So, but I got to be honest with you. From that moment to now, I've talked with a number of players, and they all say Gio is different. He learned from that moment as a person. He is not that guy anymore, and you better not be that guy anymore. You better have learned. You better have learned from some of those instances. But we haven't seen the player that once dribbled the entire Mexican team in Azteca. We haven't seen the player that could play those.
I love that play. Can we talk about that play really quick? Because it's like it's mythologized at this point. The fact he picked it up in our defensive half, and he got about 30 to 40 yards into our attacking half. It didn't lead to a shot. It didn't lead to a final action on goal. It didn't lead to, yes, I'm glad that he did it, but it didn't lead to anything of consequence. When we talk about the players that have slalom through, and we're talking about the greatest plays to ever exist in the game, they finish it with an action. Something happens. So I don't want to take anything away. It clearly demonstrates what he's capable of, and that's where I think the mythology comes. But I still would want it to see, like, yeah, cool. You dribbled 6 guys, and then you played the ball off, and we got a goal or we got a shot. Didn't even lead to that. So yeah, you're gonna say I'm a Gio hater or whatever. I'm not. The guy's got more talent in his pinky than I have my entire body. But I think it's funny that we mythologize that play when it didn't go anywhere. It didn't go anywhere, Chuck, and that fires me up a little bit.
It's just the ability that you have to put yourself in that position from where he was.
Of course. Yeah, I could never do it, but I'm just saying.
And by the way, his age at that time, right? So
what was
it's
he?
a number of things.
19,
I think he was 20.
19 or 20. Yeah.
So for a 20-year-old to do that in Azteca, I mean that's worthy of getting people's hopes and
of course,
spirits up, thinking that this kid's potential is through the roof, right? So, and by the way, this was a player who was alongside Erling Haaland and recognized as one of the best players, golden boys in world football. So
right.
It wasn't just that. It's also coupled with the fact that he was delivering at the highest stage in Champions League with Dortmund and playing alongside Erling Haaland, and they were boys. Like,
yeah, I mean, Erling Haaland nicknamed him the American Dream, right? I mean, that doesn't come from someone that doesn't know how to play. He wouldn't waste his time giving you a great nickname like that. And obviously, we've seen him perform at a high level, Nations League under BJ Callahan. I almost feel like we should bring BJ Callahan. If we're going to bring Gio onto the team, Callahan's got to be the Gio whisperer, because somehow he's unlocked Gio to play as free, and it looks like Gio's having a ton of fun out there, right? That's the version of Gio that we want to see, where he's smiling and having a good time, and he's completely engaged and alert and aware of what's happening, and is the catalyst for a lot of our attacks. That's when he's at his very, very peak. So he came out with this recent interview with the AP, Chuck, where maybe it contradicts some of the energy around him being different, because he didn't necessarily take accountability for some of his actions that had happened at the World Cup in 2022. Obviously, we're reading between the lines here, so it still feels a bit speculative, but it just feels like, yes, okay, maybe he's changed and maybe he's grown, but how much? And I guess that's what we're going to try to find out here in this camp, and then moving forward. How much has Gio Reyna grown? And we're going to find out, right?
Well, he's a married man now, right? I think he's just evolved in life. He's a different place in life. You learn from your lows, and that is among his lowest as far as his playing careers, right? I'm not even talking about his life, because he's had some unspeakable moments that has happened to him, and it's tough to move on, but he has, and you carry that with you for the rest of your life. But I would say, when you are in that situation, you should have developed a little bit more of an empathy, a sense of being appreciative of time that you have and the people that you're around, and being fortunate to play a game for your job and in a role that you can inspire millions of people. It's a special thing that sometimes we take for granted. So I'm hopeful that he's able to turn it around, get healthy, and contribute in the 2026 World Cup.
Yeah, that would be amazing. We're all wanting that, but we're just waiting to see if he can actually make that happen. All right, we're going to take our first break of Call It What You Want. When we come back, we're going to get into omissions and the impact of what this means for the players that are there and the players that are not. So don't go anywhere.
Cut.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Welcome back in to Call It What You Want. Little roster reveal today for the November window. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie Davies and not Big Tones. I can't wait to get his takes on this roster in our next show. Well, let's get back into the omissions. No Pulisic, as you mentioned, makes sense. No Tim Weah, hurt. Tillman, hurt. Johnny Cardoso coming back in from injury. Matt Turner, a bit of a surprise there. Jedi still hurt, hasn't played for a while. Chris Richards has a mystery calf injury and some beef between the two managers. I guess the big ones are kind of Musah, Turner. McKennie is a bit of a surprise for me. So I thought we'd see him, especially because Spalletti used him in a box midfield as one of the 10s recently. And I thought he looked good. He looked vibrant. He was making some stuff happen.
Yeah,
and I appreciate that.
Like he's an important player to this Juve side.
Right. So I wonder what the conversation was with regard to not bringing him in. But conversely, with those guys not in, huge opportunity for some other players to either solidify their stance. Like I want to Tyler Adams and Tanner Tessman next to each other. I wouldn't mind seeing a version of that, what that looks like. Can they evolve it from what we saw back in the Nations League when they played with each other in March? Maybe Aiden Morris gets a run out. Do we even play a back three? There's a lot of fullbacks in this one. Maybe we'll go back to a back four. I know.
Let's not even entertain that conversation.
Okay, that's fine.
So
you don't have to convince me.
Yeah, I know. But you have Miles Robinson and you have Joe Scally. They're both competing for that right center back spot. You have Tim Ream, who will probably play in this camp as the middle guy. Right. And now you have McKenzie and Trusty, who will play out,
Miles
compete for that left center back spot, right? Now, McKenzie and Trusty played together at the Philadelphia Union, so they have a great rapport. They understand each other. And Miles has played with Tim, has played with Mark, right? So I feel good with the back three and trying to figure out, okay, what is the best?
Well, for me, Scally's got to fit into that equation because he's not a wing back.
No. So then you have Destin Freeman and you have Arson and Tolkien. Those are your wing backs. Now in the midfield, we talked about this box four. So Adams and Tessman, those are your two best paired together.
Okay.
Now in front of them, that's where it gets interesting because it would have been occupied by Christian and then Weston or Tillman. Right, those are the three that are missing. So all three, and you throw in Weah, who's a wing back. He can play literally anywhere. So you have all those guys out. Zendejas out. So literally, what you're left with for this camp is Brennan Aronson, Diego Luna, and Gio Reyna for those attacking positions. Can Roldan play there?
Roldan could play there.
Yes. Could Berhalter play there? I guess, but you wouldn't say those are two 10s, right? And then
right.
Up top, you got Balogun Pepi right. And no matter what formation you play, those are your only three strikers that you have, right? So it'll be interesting to see how he goes about figuring out. There's eight players who can play four positions here.
Yeah, I could see Haji, right? Play one of the 10s. If you have to tweak. You could. I'm just saying you could tweak the system where he could find himself almost like a double striker, because at some point, actually, if we're going to tinker,
if anything of those players, it'd be Balogun who could play it as a 10.
Okay.
Faces, but you're not changing Wright, Pepi, or Balogun to play anything other than a 9. That's where they play. You're not tinkering. If anything, you'd say, oh, we play a 3-5-2 or 4-4-2, and you play with two strikers outright. But you're not saying to any of these guys, you're dropping in as a withdrawn 9 or a number 10. That's just that.
Well, so do you think there's a world, because we only have a limited amount of games, where we could, if we're using this to test, you could try a 3-5-2. I mean, you could try you try two strikers ultimately. Let's lose the formation, but you try, because at some point, what happens if we do go a goal down in a game, right? We're gonna probably throw more than one striker out there. So what does that look like? Would you entertain that? I mean, would you go from the start with maybe two strikers and see how that felt for the team?
I think Balogun with a Pepi if you're trying to say, hey, let's place two of our premier strikers together, I would be okay with that. I'd say, oh, let's see what that looks like. That these are two players who I think could fit well together, given that they don't play the same style, they don't play the same way. Even Balogun and Wright. So I think Pepi and Wright are too similar in the way that they play.
Okay.
But Balogun is a good difference, a good balance to a Pepi or a Wright. So yeah, I'd be okay with that. Iva said no Haji wide left and a 4-2-3-1. No.
Okay. And so Ivis also wants to put a bet down that they're going to play a back four. I don't think they will. I think they're going to stick with the back three. You have some different characters in the mix now, of course, but you got Arfson and Tolkien are kind of your up and down guys on the left, and then you have Destin Freeman. Yeah. You could even put Des on the left if you wanted and put Freeman on the right. You got some options there as well. I think we're going to stick with the back three. I think what's interesting is if we go with two strikers, then you lose that box in midfield and it becomes more of a triangle. Yeah. So I wonder if you kind of go more into the traditional 6-8-10. And because of the success we saw with the partnership between Adams and Roldan in the previous window against Japan, and that allowed Roldan sat a little bit, and that allowed Tyler to go hunt and do what he does best. Now, Tessman can do that as well. I just kind of curious as to which, and we'll get into this as we get closer to these games about where we think the starting 11 is going to be. But I wonder, and I would love to see two strikers at some point. We got to see what that looks like, because maybe that would unlock us in a different way as well. Knowing that, and if Balogun could drop into midfield at times to mix it up, but we need somebody to create the depth. So I don't mind if Balogun, who I think is the best runner for in behind for our team, if we lose out on him being able to do that, then somebody else has to take on that responsibility, because you have to stretch the field as much as possible to keep a back line honest. The more we play in front of them, the more they're going to inch closer and closer and closer, then it becomes a lot harder to play and create the gaps between the lines. That's me becoming a bit of a soccer nerd, but I would love to see two strikers just to see what that looks like, and can we have success with it, and why not in these two games? Why not? I'm kind of in the why not mode at this point, especially seeing this roster. There's a lot of why not choices here. Hey, let's just give them a shot. Let's bring it back in. Why not?
Well, this is the thing too. You got a Paraguay and an Uruguay, right? Two World Cup opponents. So would you experiment more so in the Uruguay game or the Paraguay game? Because it feels like the Paraguay game is a game you go out to win. Of course, you want to go out to win in both, but that's a game you got to do. You got to play your best lineup, your best formation, what you think in your mind you're going to go with for the majority of the summer of 2026, and you play that way. Uruguay, maybe you could say, let's try a new look, or let's try, and by the way, Gio Reyna might come in as a substitute that first game, and maybe he starts against Uruguay. That'd be something. But yeah, that's the problem.
Listen, Bielsa, with the way that Bielsa likes to coach and the way his team's set up, and he's the manager of Uruguay, and we saw them obviously in the Copa America. They are tough bastards, and you need to be a grown ass man if you're going to step on the field and have consistent success against them in every phase of the game and every facet of it. So yeah, I think it's going to be a real test, and it's going to be, you're going to find out who your men are in your team. And I'm curious as to who he rolls out in both games, because you might be looking to get different answers from a different type of player profile. So yeah, if Gio starts that Uruguay game and does well against the Uruguay team, that will be kicking you pretty much the whole game. You're curious how not only he responds, but to any players that are playing, especially in the attacking positions. That's gonna be a hell of a game. And you can't sleep on Paraguay. Those are just another South American team. Like Ecuador. I don't know if I really want to play these guys. Like, they're a trap game. If you play them in the World Cup, you're like, God damn it, these guys are good. And they know, because they cut their teeth in such a tough area of the world, qualifying is so hard. They've got their identity. It's just stamped in them that it's always going to be a hard, difficult game. So yeah, I don't think the Paraguay game is going to be any easier, but yes, on paper, a little easier than the Uruguay game. Yeah, these are good questions, Chuck. I'm glad we're having these conversations.
Yes, same. I'm looking forward to this window.
Yeah, I am as well. And I'm kind of curious as to some of the rationale behind some of these selections, because it felt like some of these players were no longer part of the conversation, but yet here they are. I'll use Austin Trusty as an example. Now with Cameron Carter-Vickers, unfortunately, hurting his Achilles and being out for the next 4 months, that opened up, an opportunity for the other Celtic American center back to come in with Austin Trusty. He just got man of the match recently in a game against Rangers. So coming in good form, good confidence.
You get man of the match in the biggest match in Scotland, you're doing something right?
Yeah.
To be man of the match in the Old Firm Derby, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, the Last Chance Saloon, this is pretty much it. Then you have the March window, and then he's got to name the team, which is wild. So where are we on it? Let's talk about a couple more of the omissions. You feel like Yunus Musah not getting called into this one, which we're calling Last Chance Saloon? Do you think he's out? We shouldn't count on Yunus Musah siding for the 2026 World Cup roster at all? Or do you feel like there's still embers of hope in there somewhere if he can find his way into the Atalanta team? I mean, he's just one of a few players that you start to get concerned about because we're running out of windows.
Yeah, he's on the outside. He's right now. This is a big concern because a player like Gio Reyna is in the same situation. He's getting called in and not Yunus. And there's a number of, look at all the players that are missing.
Yeah. So Zawadzki over Musah. Who would have thought Zawadzki over Musah?
The players who are missing are guarantees. They're not like the players who you're like, oh, they're in the conversation. Or Anthony Robinson is a guarantee. Richards, Christian, McKennie. So McKennie, Pulisic, Weah, and Tillman are all guarantees.
Richards. Yeah.
No, but I'm saying in the positions that Musah
right. I see.
Those are all guarantees. On top of Adams and Tessman are locked. You'd say Luna's locked, even as a substitute. And we're forgetting Johnny Cardoso, who's been injured, who's coming back. Where does Yunus Musah fit in when you're not playing? You're not going to get in.
Yeah, I don't know where he fits in.
I go back to this horrible decision to move to Atalanta, and I think taking a break too this summer. And we all know.
I think that's hurting him more than the Atalanta.
Yeah,
well,
the Atalanta one's to take a summer break when you weren't playing, you weren't overused, and I know people need mental health breaks and need restarts, but to take a mental break, a vacation this summer to call, hey, I want to stay, with my family, when you weren't used, you didn't overrun yourself. That's a killer. That's for me. If I'm a coach, I'm saying you don't want to be here. This isn't a priority. The World Cup is next summer. You don't get to play a World Cup's on home soil. You have the opportunity to do that, and you need a break.
Yeah.
And by the way, your position's not set on this team. You're not in the same boat as Christian. That's tough.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know how he works his way back in other than getting playing time. This is an interesting camp of omissions, players that are getting called in. And in some ways, I know we touched upon Scally a little bit. I'm telling you the details. There's been a big, I don't say big. Yeah, I guess it's big, but there's been a lot more talk, I should say, Chuck, of the culture, right? We've heard it from the players. We've heard it from Pochettino. Like, they're watching every single thing. And so I wonder who's going to shine with that type of spotlight on them. Not only, like I said, not only the games are important, but they're a product of how your habits and disciplines, off the field and how they play onto the field.
The spotlight has been on them since Pochettino took over, but now, you're up against the clock.
Yes.
There's an
urgency there now, right?
There's only one more window.
Yeah.
Put that in perspective. There's only one more real window to prove that you deserve to be on this roster. So for guys in this camp, the ones we talked about, if they don't show any signs of progress, any signs of them being leaders and impact players within this group, come March, if they don't get called in for the next two friendlies, which by all accounts are going to be massive opponents, then that's lights out for me. That's curtains.
Right. Now, the one thing I guess we haven't touched upon that maybe people thought we would have 35 minutes into the show is the fact that we have Sebastian Berhalter and Gio Reyna on the same roster. Apparently, they used to talk a lot back in the day. I don't know if that still exists, but it could be a little awkward if they haven't talked in a while. What do you say, Chuck? I mean, for me, listen, I had an issue here. Let me say this. I'll give some context. In 2006, I played in the World Cup team with Clint Dempsey. A month later, after the World Cup, he broke my jaw. Okay, he sent me a message afterwards and apologized and all that, and it was great. But when you're sitting there and you're injured for 8 weeks, you just get at this built-up animosity, and you start to think through all the plays and did he do that on purpose? Was it an accident? You just go through that whole process. And so my first game back was against the New England Revolution and Clint Dempsey. So I had said in a radio interview that if I have a chance to let Clint know that I'm back and ready to go, sure, I'll let him know. And that got completely spun out of control and got back to Clint that I was out there to hurt him. And I came on as a sub for 10 minutes left to go. And there was a 50-50 ball and ran through him, and he turned into a fight. Wanted to fight me after the whatever, blah, 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 all the high emotion. So the next time I see Clint, I know I'm burying a lot of details here, but the next time I see Clint is at the end of the year MLS Awards. We both made best 11, and it was awkward, intense. Now this is another level. This is times 100 between these two. But I went up to Clint right away and I just squashed it. I said, "Hey man, I was emotional and just took responsibility for my actions within that. Obviously, I'm not trying to hurt you or anybody else." And that was it. And since then, me and Clint have been solid. So I wonder and I hope that both of these guys will get right to it and this won't even be an issue. And that's what I expect will happen. But it is interesting that they're both in the camp at the same time, given the history of their families at this point.
Yeah, I would say from them as professionals, you move on.
Yeah.
And whether you're not friends, we've all been a part of teams where you play with guys you don't like or you don't respect because they have done something, they treated people poorly, or they did something bad to a teammate, whatever it is. But you're all professionals and you all have to figure out ways to work together. Now that applies across life. You're in jobs, you're around people that you may not particularly like, but you still have to figure out a way to move forward and to work together, even though you may not like somebody. So it's a good point for these two to come in and say, "Hey, we're professionals. We're trying to play in a World Cup. We're also playing in the midfield, so we're competing with each other. Maybe we're playing together. We just have to do what's best for the country, right? For our game and for the team." You move that on. I think the awkward part is if you're talking about the Berhalters sitting there in the stadium and Reyna sitting there stadium. It's the parents. That's where it's really awkward.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
Because you're talking about all the parents sitting in the same section, because that's typically what happens. Then that's where you're like, all right, they sit down there, we sit up here, or we keep our distance. But in terms of guys on the field sharing moments together, you get on with it.
All right, we are going to take our final break of the show, and when we come back, it's going to be hearing from Mauricio Pochettino, which should be great. All right, everybody, here on the YouTube channel, Glosso America. I know I teased a little bit of the fun stuff there, but we are going to stop down this video at this very moment. Come back and join us live at 12 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be me and Paul Tenorio, and we're going to go over the press conference from Mauricio Pochettino. So don't go anywhere.